In the elegant restaurant, the Golden Lantern in New York, everyone ignored the Japanese gentleman in simple clothes who walked in with his head down that night. To the customers, he looked like just a poor man, tired of life. But Julia Bennett, the 23-year-old polyglot waitress who always believed in kindness, noticed something different. When she greeted him in perfect Japanese, saying, "Irashaimase," the man lifted his eyes for the first time, and in that instant, something changed. She didn't know it yet, but that humble gentleman was Akio Tanaka, the billionaire owner of the entire restaurant, who had lost faith in humanity until he heard that single word. Do you want to know what that word means? Then come follow this story that will move you. Have you ever wondered how a simple gesture, a word spoken with respect, can completely change the destiny of two people? Write your thoughts in the comments and tell us which city you're from. Sometimes life places someone in our path who seems small, but carries exactly the lesson we need to rediscover our faith in the world. In that moment, Akio lifted his head, and his eyes, darkened for months, shone once again. What Julia didn't know is that that simple gesture would spark a turning point capable of transforming not only his life, but hers as well. Because that night held a secret, and when it came to light, it would reveal that no one is too small to brighten someone's world, and that even billionaires carry wounds that only true kindness can heal. Sometimes it's an invisible gesture that saves a heart on the verge of giving up. But before I tell you exactly what happened that night, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell, because this story will touch you in a way you might not expect. Now, the question is, why did the billionaire Akio Tanaka enter disguised as a poor man? What was he trying to discover? And why did Julia's simple word make him silently cry at that table?
And it wasn't just that single word, irashaimase. It means you are very welcome. What truly surprised Akio Tanaka was Julia's entire behavior. Her politeness, her care with every customer, her patience, her genuine smile, the way she listened before responding. While he watched from that quiet corner, he saw people praising her service constantly. I come back here because of this waitress. She's radiant. Her service is flawless. I've never seen anyone attend so well. It was as if Julia carried a silent light inside her, a kindness that wasn't forced, wasn't trained, wasn't performed. It was natural. It was real. And that awakened something inside him. He didn't expect to be treated with respect, especially dressed like a simple man, especially looking like someone who had nothing to offer. But Julia treated everyone the same, from the wealthy customer to the lonely boy at the corner table, and that deeply touched the heart of a man who, despite being a billionaire, was used to being seen for what he had, never for who he was.
Julia Bennett had always believed that kindness was a daily choice. At the Golden Lantern, a high-end American restaurant in Manhattan, she was known for something rare. She treated every customer as if they were unique, important, human. It wasn't about serving expensive dishes. It was about serving respect. That night, while adjusting her blue apron and checking the tables lit by warm golden lights, Julia noticed the arrival of an elderly man with a simple appearance. A worn coat, lowered eyes, slow steps. To many there, he could easily pass as someone who didn't belong in such an upscale place. But to her, something about that man caught her attention. He seemed tired on the inside, not on the outside. He looked like he carried a kind of sadness that new clothes couldn't hide. Julia took a deep breath and walked toward him with that smile that always lit up her face. When he lifted his eyes, she saw a different kind of shine, a mix of surprise and vulnerability. And then, in a gesture that would completely change both of their destinies, she greeted him in Japanese. "Irashaimase." You are very welcome. The man froze for a second, not just because of the word, but because of the tone, the way she said it, the sincerity. Julia didn't know it, but that man, who appeared poor, was Akio Tanaka, the billionaire owner of the restaurant. That night, dressed simply on purpose, he was testing something painful. He wanted to know whether humanity still existed without him showing the money he possessed. And Julia, unknowingly, proved that it did. She continued smiling, as naturally as always. "May I take you to a very comfortable table? Today we have a special menu that's been highly praised." He only nodded, still in shock. As she guided him, other customers called her by name, praising her service, asking for her to always be their server. Julia laughed, made gentle jokes, and served each table with care. It was obvious. People returned more because of her than because of the refined dishes. Akio watched everything in silence. And for the first time in a long time, he felt his heart soften. Julia noticed that he was trembling slightly from the cold. Without making a fuss, she picked up a small portable heater that stayed near the window and placed it beside him. "I hope this helps. The night is pretty cold today." He thanked her with a small Japanese gesture of respect. She returned the gesture, perfectly executed. That was what broke him on the inside. Behind that politeness, that natural kindness, that fluency in several languages, he saw something he hadn't seen in decades: purity. And in that moment, he already knew that waitress would change his life, and he would change hers forever. But Julia had no idea who was sitting at table 14, much less about the silent test that was about to transform her entire story. While Julia attended table 14 with her usual calm, not everyone in the restaurant shared her same kindness. The Golden Lantern, despite its elegance, also hosted customers who confused money with superiority, and coworkers who confused work with competition. That night, the injustice would come from where she least expected it. As soon as Julia stepped away from the Japanese gentleman's table, two coworkers, Marissa and Claire, both more experienced waitresses, exchanged glances and laughed quietly. "She never learns," murmured Marissa, "always wasting time on people who won't leave a tip." Claire added, looking at the man in simple clothes, "I bet he shouldn't even be here. Looks like he walked in just to warm up. Someone needs to tell Julia that kindness doesn't pay bills." They kept laughing, but their comment dropped into the air like a weight. What no one knew was that Akio Tanaka heard everything, sitting quietly, observing, and listening. He was used to being treated with indifference whenever he dressed simply, but seeing the contrast between their coldness and Julia's kindness hurt more than he expected. Julia, on the other hand, heard nothing. She was too busy doing what she did best, serving with humanity. When she returned to check if he needed anything, Akio attempted a smile, but Julia noticed the tension in his eyes. "Is everything okay, sir?" she asked softly. He only nodded, trying to hide the impact of the words he had heard. But the injustice wasn't over yet. Minutes later, the manager, Mr. Collins, a rigid and impatient man, approached Julia with a clipboard in hand. "Julia, I need to talk to you. Now." She felt her heart race. The way he spoke always made everyone uncomfortable. "What happened?" she asked carefully. Collins sighed, irritated. "Some customers said you give too much attention to tables that aren't worth it. That slows down the service and disrupts the flow." Julia frowned, confused. "I was just doing my job and being polite." "Politeness doesn't pay the restaurant's rent," he replied coldly. "Be practical, serve fast, no frills, and please don't waste time on people who won't bring profit." Akio heard every word, and his heart tightened. The manager looked directly at the Japanese gentleman, clearly judging his appearance. "For example, that table right there. Someone like him should be served by the trainee, not by you." Julia felt her face burn with shame, not for herself, but for him. She took a deep breath, swallowed the pain, and answered firmly, "Everyone who walks in here deserves respect, no matter how much they spend." Collins huffed and walked away, and in that exact moment, Akio made his decision. That injustice needed consequences, and that waitress needed protection. The night was far from over, and the test he had come to perform was only just beginning.
In the days that followed, the weight of that conversation with the manager began to fall heavily on Julia. She tried not to show it, but inside, she was shaken. She had always believed that kindness was a value, not a flaw. She had always believed that treating everyone well was the foundation of being human, not a mistake to be corrected. But it seemed no one in the restaurant thought that way. Marissa and Claire kept making venomous comments whenever she walked by. Look at Saint Julia, smiling at everyone. I bet she doesn't even get a tip from that old man. So smart, yet she understands nothing about real life. Julia pretended not to hear, but each word pierced like a needle. Even so, she continued working with dedication until something happened. That night, the restaurant was packed. The Golden Lantern was full of well-dressed customers, speaking loudly, toasting with expensive wine, admiring sophisticated dishes. Among them, seated discreetly at table 14, was the Japanese gentleman once again, Akio Tanaka, still in disguise. He observed everything, attentive, silent, and he saw the moment Julia began to falter. First, the tables started piling up. Then, the manager called her attention for something she hadn't even done. Then, a customer treated her with arrogance, complaining about the dish before even tasting it, blaming her for it. Julia took a deep breath, trying to stay in control.
But inside, the emotional exhaustion was beginning to overflow. When she passed near the Japanese gentleman's table, he noticed the settled tremble in her hands. Something was wrong. He asked quietly, "Are you okay?" Julia tried to smile, but this time she couldn't. I'm just a little tired." But her eyes said something else. Then came the final drop. The manager, visibly irritated, called Julia out in the middle of the dining room in front of the customers. "Julia, enough. You're slow today. You're leaving tables waiting. This is hurting the service." She felt her face burn. It wasn't true. She was doing the work of 3 people while the other 2 chatted and did their makeup in the back. But Collins didn't care. He never did. I'm doing my best, Mr. Collins," she said, her voice almost fading. "Your best is not enough," he replied coldly. And in front of everyone, he added, "After your shift, come to my office. We need to discuss your future here." She froze. The entire restaurant went silent for a moment, and though she tried to take a deep breath, her chest hurt as if she had taken a punch. She turned quickly, before anyone could see the tear that slipped down. But someone saw. Akio Tanaka. And in that moment, the pain he carried from his own family, from the decay of the humanity he believed had vanished, found an echo in the pain of that young waitress who only wanted to do good. He clenched his fists. The decision was made. If the world wanted to break that girl, he would not allow it. The turning point was on its way.
The shift had ended, and the dining hall of the Golden Lantern was almost empty. The lights still glowed with that elegant golden tone, but to Julia, everything felt dim. She stared at the manager's office door as if looking at an unavoidable sentence. "I'm going to be fired. And for what? For being kind?" she thought, feeling her chest tighten. Before knocking, she took a deep breath. It was hard to keep her composure when the world felt far too unfair. "Mr. Collins?" she called softly. He didn't even lift his eyes. "Come in, Julia. Let's be direct. Your performance has dropped and—" A light knock on the door cut him off. Julia turned around. The Japanese man, the simple, quiet, invisible to everyone else customer, stood there. His posture firm, his gaze calm, and a presence that, for some reason, changed the air in the room. "May I speak for a moment?" he asked. Collins frowned, impatient. "Sir, this is a restricted area. Please return to the dining—" But he stepped forward. A single step, full of authority. "My name is Akio Tanaka." The manager's eyes widened. Julia's too. Her heart began to race. Tanaka continued with a serene tone that commanded respect. "I am the founder and owner of the Golden Lantern and all of its franchise locations." Silence filled the office. The manager swallowed hard, turning pale. "Mr. Tanaka, I didn't know." "You didn't need to know. I came here without announcements, without warnings, and without expensive clothing, because I wanted to see what many people hide when they think no one is watching." Collins started to sweat. Akio looked at Julia, a deep look, filled with gratitude. "For weeks, I observed the behavior of the staff, the coldness, the rush, the lack of empathy, but I also observed something rare." Julia felt her hands tremble. "I observed you," he said gently, "the way you treat every person, every customer,
including me when you thought I was just a tired old man." He drew a slow breath. "I cared for you without judgment, and to this day, very few people in the world have done something so simple and so valuable." Collins tried to speak. "Sir, I can explain." Akio raised a hand. "I'm not interested in explanations. I'm interested in character, and what I witnessed here today disappointed me deeply." Julia closed her eyes for a moment. She knew what was coming. The manager was probably about to be punished. But then came something she didn't expect. "Julia Bennett, I invite you to a meeting tomorrow morning at the company headquarters. I have a proposal for you. Something big. Something that will change your life." Julia froze. "A proposal?" she managed to say. "Yes," he replied, smiling. "I want people like you leading the future of this brand. People who understand that respect and kindness are more valuable than any profit." Julia covered her mouth, overwhelmed. Collins collapsed into his chair. And before leaving, he left one last sentence in the air. "Sometimes true wealth is hidden where no one looks, but those who see with the heart always find it." And in that moment, the impossible began to happen.
The next day, even before the sun rose, the golden lantern was already in motion. But there was something different in the air, a soft tension, as if everyone sensed it would be an unusual day. Julia arrived on time, as always, tired but with a calm heart. After the conversation with Akio the night before, she was still trying to process everything. The idea that her kindness had touched someone so important still felt surreal, but she had no idea what was about to happen. When she walked into the dining hall, she found Akio already seated, discreetly, as he always did. But this time, he wasn't disguised. He wore elegant clothes, stood with firm posture, and his eyes were filled with purpose. The manager, Scott, walked toward him with a mix of irritation and fake politeness. "Mr. Tanaka, we didn't expect to see you so early," he said, his voice trembling. Akio stood up slowly. "I noticed, and that is exactly why I'm here." The employees exchanged glances. Silence took over the restaurant. He gestured for Julia to come closer. She stopped beside him, a little nervous, as Akio walked toward the center of the room. "For many years, I entrusted this place to you, and I expected the most important value of my life to be preserved here: respect." The manager swallowed hard. Two waitresses who often mocked Julia crossed their arms, attempting to hide their discomfort. "Yesterday, I was treated in very different ways by this team. Some looked at me with disdain, others ignored me completely, and some mocked a customer they believed to be poor." The smiles vanished instantly from the two waitresses' faces. Akio then turned to Julia. But there was someone who chose to see beyond appearances, someone who treated a stranger with dignity, patience, and warmth, and that changed everything. Julia blushed, unsure how to respond. Akio took a breath and turned back to the staff. "As of today, the following are dismissed: Scott, the manager, and you two," he said, pointing at the waitresses, who turned pale. "I will not keep in my team those who see customers as numbers and colleagues as stepping stones." Shock spread through the room. Scott tried to argue, "You're making a mistake, sir." "The only mistake here," Akio interrupted, "was allowing arrogance to replace respect. You may gather your belongings." They left without looking back. Akio then turned gently to Julia. "And now,
It's time to talk about you." Julia held her breath. "I want you to take on the role of CEO of all my franchises," he announced with a soft smile. "You have what I value most, character. People like that are far too rare." Julia's eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Tanaka, I don't know if I deserve—" "You deserve more than you think, and I want you to carry this for life. Kindness never goes unnoticed. Never." She cried, and the entire restaurant applauded her. Justice had been served, and the reward, too.
The Golden Lantern was no longer the same. After everything that had happened, Akio decided to begin a deep transformation within the company, and that change started with the people. The dismissal of the arrogant manager and the waitresses who mocked Julia was not just an act of justice, it was a wake-up call. Akio wanted to rebuild the entire environment based on respect, empathy, and humanity. So he launched a new hiring process, reviewing every position, every leadership role, and every behavior. He looked for people who truly wanted to serve with kindness and empathy, not just occupy a job. And at the center of this renovation was Julia Bennett, now appointed CEO. For many employees, that title felt distant, almost impossible. But Julia explained it with the same simplicity she used when serving a table. Being a CEO means being the person responsible for the direction of the entire company. It's like steering a ship. I don't do everything alone, but I make sure we all row in the same direction, with respect and purpose. And she led with the same spark in her eyes she had when wishing a customer good night. Julia took on an essential role, helping to select every new person hired. She wanted everyone to have the chance to work in an environment where kindness was the rule, not the exception. She interviewed candidates, read their expressions, listened to their stories, and chose those who showed character before resume. This became a signature trait of the business group. As for Akio, his will remained locked away, but with a completely new intention. He did not leave his companies to Julia. He believed that responsibility of that magnitude should not be a burden, but a free choice. What he did was something different, smarter, and more selfless. He used his influence among major entrepreneurs and restaurant owners in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, London, Tokyo, and many other places to ensure that Julia would always have growth, respect in the market, and golden opportunities wherever she went. He often said, "The world needs to know people like you." And that's exactly what happened. Since the Golden Lantern Group had franchises in multiple countries, Julia began traveling frequently. And for the first time in her life, she had the time and the means to live what she had always dreamed of. She walked through the streets of London, practiced French in Parisian cafes, trained Japanese in Tokyo, learned traditions in Korea, and collected memories. Every trip was work, but also discovery. It was fulfillment. She remembered studying languages alone in her small home, imagining what it would be like to explore the world. Now that world was part of her everyday life. Julia overcame hardships, humiliation, doubt, and she was rewarded in a way she never could have imagined. Not with money, not with luxury, but with recognition, purpose, and a future she built with her own kindness. In the end, the lesson remained forever. Life always returns what we give it to it, sometimes not at the time we want, but always at the right time. And Julia, with a light heart, knew. The good she once planted was now blooming in every place she walked through. And now I ask you, what about you? What would your turning point be if someone recognized your worth today?
Tell me in the comments, what act of kindness have you done that you never forgot or that someone once did for you? I want to read your story. If this story touched your heart, don't leave just yet. The next inspiring story is already appearing on your screen. Click and continue this journey of emotion, faith, and transformation.